Hello, everybody. This is Colleen with Speaking of Spirits, and I am here with Gina and Kate and Susie. And we're in my very messy house, so pardon the mess. We thought that we would talk today about local, like Native American stuff, legends and skinwalkers and all that. And I know we've talked before, right?
Yeah, last time.
Yeah, Water Babies, because Water Babies is a local legend, so you can go back and listen to that podcast. But we also have, and I don't know if I talked too much about some of the things that the Native Americans have told me about Mount Putnam. Mm-hmm. But so Mount Putnam is on the Fort Hall Reservation, and it's the Shoshone-Bannock Reservation, which is our local reservation in Pocatello. And it kind of goes from Pocatello to Chubbuck and out to American Falls.
Right.
And then to the west, it goes doesn't it go over like Buckskin back that way?
I think so. I was just Googled it today, and it's kind of almost an upside down U, but the one side is down longer that goes down to Power County, and then it goes on the other side.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You've been listening to Speaking of Spirits, powered by Pocatello Paranormal Research in Pocatello, Idaho. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you could be here. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do us a favor and go to whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on and give us a review. We prefer the 5-star reviews. This helps us know how we're doing, and it helps others to find the podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next podcast.
Or McCammon.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah, back through the hills.
Yeah.
Like where I live up on, I'd say Butte and Hiskey area. It is around us. Instead, we're not in it, but we're in like the little square that isn't in it.
So. Yeah, it's really interesting the way they carved out this reservation, and it doesn't really make sense to me that it's not. But anyway. I work some on the mine that's out here on the Fort Hall Reservation, and it's a historic mine that's in the process of being cleaned up right now. And so I've gone out there. It's really weird because every time I go out there, something very unusual happens. And I'm out there alone by myself a lot. I check in and out so they know I'm there, but I'm out there by myself because I'm looking at environmental stuff and have to do inspections and do stuff like that. So I drive out there and I love it because I'm alone and I can just sit and kind of experience it because it has a completely different feel than any place else that I've been out here. But what's fascinating about being out there is I have been told by some of the Native Americans that I work with on this project that there's a Bigfoot type shapeshifter creature that lives on Mount Putnam. And Mount Putnam is when you're heading north on I-15 towards Blackfoot. If you look over to the east, it's the mountain, the large mountain right there. And it's beautiful. And you're not allowed, if you're not part of the Shoshone-Bannock tribe here, you're not allowed on Mount Putnam unless you're helping with firefighting or doing something like that, right? But it's considered a sacred area and you're not allowed. But it's weird that almost every time I've gone out, even sometimes when I'm with other people, we've rescued people that have been hurt on Mount Putnam, tribal members that have rolled vehicles or gotten really badly hurt. We've had to call ambulances, you name it, things go down up there. It's nuts. And I don't know if it's because it's so accessible to the tribal members, and especially the teenagers. They go out there and they screw around with their rigs and they get things stuck and then they get hurt. I did that kind of stuff growing up. So I don't know if that's the case, but I can tell you that one time I was out on the mine, and before I get into the legend, you're going to find this just weird. I am out by myself, and there's you can drive through the mine to go to the Blackfoot River. Okay. So you can go all the way through the mine on Agency Road, which is right next to the casino, and you can drive that road. It turns into gravel, and then you can go all the way to Blackfoot. And there's BLM campgrounds back there. That you can either drive in from Soda or you can go through that road. That's a county maintained road. Mm-hmm. So you can go back that way. And when you go back there, you're actually going through the old mine. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you wouldn't know it, right? But there's some old pits back there that you could actually drive into, but you wouldn't know if you got off the road and you started driving, you'd end up in an old mine pit. I was back there and I'm doing some environmental stuff and I'm taking pictures and doing my recordings and doing stuff like that. And there's a freaking propane truck driving into a pit. A full propane truck, like a suburban propane truck. And I stopped, I'm flagging him down and he stops and he goes, where the hell am I? He was just so like
disoriented.
Yeah, disoriented. I go, well, you're in a mine pit right now. His eyes were like saucers. He's like, how did I get in here? It's almost like he had this
deja vu, like you see the Mirage, sort of a disoriented.
Disoriented. He couldn't figure out what was going on. I said, dude, you are in the mine. He goes, can you help me get out of here? It was like he went through some kind of veil.
It's the Bermuda Triangle.
So did you see the big sign that you were entering the mine? Because there is a sign. If there's to take the county road, it does a big turn. And then if you keep going straight, there's a sign. It says, do not enter or something like that, gay mine or something. It clearly demarks the beginning of the mine. And he just, so I had to take him out and go all the way around to show him where Lincoln Creek Road was again. Wow. He was so out of it. But it's weird. So let's get on with this skinwalker thing. I have an acquaintance who has a family cabin. There's a group of family cabins on the Blackfoot River. And you have to go across, like they built their own bridge. So you go across the bridge and there's like maybe 7 cabins and they're all the same family and they've had them for generations. And there's no like electricity or running water in these cabins. Or there's summer cabins. They go out and fish on the river and stay for the weekend. And, he said he was, well, I went out there with them to close the cabin for the winter, or one of the cabins for the winter. And we were coming back through Day Mine. And I said, has anything weird ever happened to you out here? And he stopped the truck, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, so the winter. He stops and he goes, yeah, as a matter of fact. And he said that he's coming back through the mine one night, and right before you enter the actual eastern edge of the mine proper, he said it's like midnight. He was out fishing all day and coming home late, and he lived in Blackfoot. So if you were to go the long way around, you'd have to go, it would take you an hour to get to Soda Springs and then come all the way around. So they always cut through the mine because or not on the county road, because then you're in Blackfoot within 40 minutes, right? And so he says, I see this, I'm driving and it's late and I'm tired and I just want to get home. I have work the next day. And he goes, and I see this shape in my headlights. And he says, it looks like a Bigfoot shape. He says, this thing's like 8-9 feet tall. I don't know, but it's tall, it's huge, and it's dark. He goes, it's dark and I can tell it's solid because my headlights aren't going through. It's like solid. And he goes, and it's just looking at me. And I stop my truck and he goes, and I start backing up and it's keeping time with my truck. Mm-hmm. And so he goes, and then I back up faster and it's keeping time with my truck. And then he goes, and he goes, everything in my body screamed, get out of here or you're going to die. Kind of get out, get out, get out. He goes, I just whipped that truck around and took off. And he drove all the way through Soda to come back to Blackfoot. And he says it scared him to death. And for years, he wouldn't go through that road. And he says, I kept hearing about this thing out here from other hunters because they go through to go elk hunting back there, people who have gone camping on the Blackfoot River back there on these BLM campgrounds. He kept hearing about all these things and he's like, and it shook him so badly. And then I heard from tribal members about this thing, and they call him the Green Man, but the Green Man in Celtic lore is not this at all, right? And so this thing is menacing but can be somewhat protective also. I ran into a young lady who was going to commit suicide one night, and she drove her car. Let's see, what road would that be? I want to say it was not Cemetery. It could be Edmo. So Edmo goes over the freeway into the cropland.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just dead ends up on the crops where the crops are. And she was going to shoot herself up there. And she was sitting there, highly emotional, contemplating doing this, ready to do this, gun in her hand, and she saw this thing. And it approached her car, and she said she had some kind of almost ESP moment with it, like it was reading her mind, or there was some kind of form of communication there where she emptied the gun and put it away and drove home, and that was it. And she never thought about doing that again. So in that instance, it saved her.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if...
Well, there could have been, I mean, really and truly, because I've heard this time and time again, that when people think they're after them or scaring them, they're trying to protect them from something. And maybe there was something going on. If he'd have went past, maybe you'd have had car trouble. Or...
Yeah, right. And we had this conversation, didn't we, all of us, about people who say they see the dog chasing them on the reservation. And you guys said maybe it's not chasing, maybe it's protecting and guiding.
Mm-hmm. So that's the conversation that I've had with you before, where I've seen the dog kind of like half fox, half weasel thing running along inside the car. And I had that same conversation driving out with Katie today, that we always feel something that's out here protecting. Whenever we come out on the reservation, it's watching us, but it's kind of like, make sure you're on the up and up when you're out here. Be good, because we always feel that.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a double side to the coin out, like, and it's not just a reservation. I get it in American Falls.
Yeah,
I really get it in Blackfoot.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
but
really
it was
and truly, yeah. I'm like,
land.
We have a reservation, but this was their land. Miles and miles and miles was their land. Whether we've drawn it on a map and said, "Now you still get to have it."
I get in certain places in Blackfoot, I get really overwhelmed there about menacing, kind of a menacing.
Yes.
I don't know what it is, but it's
kind of like guardians, right?
I guess you're in
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the one story that I heard was more in the Washington area, and they were hiking, I think. And you see these videos they hear this scream sound that it's not human. It's not really an animal that they've heard before, but it's this loud screaming sound. And they hightailed it back the other direction because they're like, oh my gosh, is this a Bigfoot? Is it coming after us? What's going on? And they could hear some branches crunching and stuff. They got back to the camp and the ranger said, are you guys aware that there's been a grizzly bear in the area? And they said that they felt like maybe this thing was trying to warn them not to go up further, because that's where it had been seen, was up further up this trail on the mountain, and that it was screaming not necessarily to scare them, but to warn them or to scare the bear from being where they were at.
Or scare them away.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they said one of the most frightening things in their life, and maybe it was the thing that saved them from actually running into this bear.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. There's also these little creatures that are on Mount Putnam that I've been told about, and they're called nunnabees.
Are they like elfie?
Yep. They're the elfie things. Have you heard about these?
Yes, but I was reading about them in the Oahe Mountains in Idaho.
Now that's fascinating.
Yes.
Well, they're shown out there as well.
And then also over in Wyoming, and that they actually found a little mummified body.
Really?
I've heard of that too.
And they said that it's all over in the Shoshone legends about little elf-like creatures that have the poison arrows, and they would shoot you,
Now, it's kind of interesting because it was after, let's see, it was like 8 years ago. I was working out there, and I came driving into the mine entrance, and I see this young man who was just blood. And he's walking along the gravel road, and I stopped. I'm like, my God, what happened? And he's like, we rolled our car. He goes, can you help? And I said, yes, get in. And there's no self-service up there. So I had to turn around and drive back down Agency Road closer towards Fort Hall to where I could get a signal to call the police and an ambulance, because they had rolled their car. Car had rolled over one young man. And there was like 3 or 4 really badly injured people in this wreck. And he had said that they had seen these little things and drove off the road. These little people, but they weren't people. I mean, he was really confused about what they are. It's almost like dwarves.
Yeah. What I heard the description was it was between, it looked like a human and a carved. What I heard was it looked wood-ish. The coloring or it was not smooth. And I was like, that is so weird. But they're like, yeah, like you can imagine someone carved out a figure, but it's living and moving. And
that's what I was reading too. It looks like wooden, but they're small and they're like dwarf-like, but they're cannibalistic. And so they blend real well into the environment, but they'll come get you. That's just what I
hadn't heard that part, but I heard they were very, very mischievous.
So these ones that I was reading about were
like vicious.
Yep, vicious.
Yeah, and that's what I heard from the local Native Americans that
that is so interesting.
Well, I'd never heard the wooden part, but I heard that they are they're not good. When you see them, they're not good.
Okay, so that's like, so I was reading about them over in Wyoming and the Owahis, and so that's pretty widespread.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being up there, I've never felt. Maybe it's because I love it so much when I'm out there.
Well,
I
love it. What I'm wondering with what you heard of the intentions is it matches energy. So if you're going in to go ripping 4-wheel drive up the mountains, or you're going into killing, I mean, there's a difference between hunting and killing, and that it means that energy because, but I've heard they're like what's considered a leprechaun. They're mischievous and they're not necessarily friendly.
Yeah.
But I had never heard the cannibalistic. But I would imagine that would be another type of the earth protector.
Yeah.
Because we ran into several different types with our investigations that are, it's like, a lot of people do not respect Mother Earth in the way that they should. Yes, we have to do some things. Yes, we have to build or change or whatever, but there's people that are destructive and there's people that are environmentally conscious when they're doing things.
Yeah. Well, even, a lot of people get mad at the mining companies and then this, that. Those people live in the areas that they're working in and they love it and they hunt out there and they want to see it clean and restored. But we still have to do the mining. Because we still want our cell phones and we still want all this other stuff. So we have to strike a happy balance with all this. But there is one, and I think I brought this up to you guys before. There's one mine that I have to go to for part of my work. And every time I'm there, I just know I'm being watched. And I hate it because it's, I wish. I can show you on Google Earth where it is.
I had no idea they fell asleep in the room before I did. Here. But I got I didn't know how to all this equipment with them.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And actually, there's a couple of mines that I could take you to because it's a public road to get in there. And but this particular place, I always feel something threatening is there. It's just this there, and I don't know what it is. And I don't think it's like it's mad at the mining. I think it's something went down there, and that energy is just all around. It's almost ambush.
Yeah, I was going to say there's just a whole different level of energy. It went like, especially out here, or anything like that versus like haunting energy.
Yes,
or like you've walked in a room of people arguing energy. It just is this almost more dense, more thick, primal, kind of an energy.
And I think, we spend so much of our time dealing in hauntings, but we have run across these in human entities. They're not, and we've talked about them a little bit before. And there's 2 in particular that we've run across many, many times, and they're called the Watcher. Well, they call themselves the Watcher and the Keeper, but they're never have been human. And we ask them, like, I always describe them as in the masculine just because they're so enormous. A woman wouldn't generally be that big. They're huge.
Supposedly Deer Woman out here is big. Isn't that the one that the firefighters thought they saw was Deer Woman by the big tree?
No, it was this Green Man thing.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I think it was the Green Man.
I
Because it
read
shapeshifted.
Deer Woman.
I have not heard. So let's talk about that. But let's so the Watcher and the Keeper, when we've asked them, like, they're one watches the destruction that the other is causing, and that bothers me. But they don't interfere with what each other's mission seems to be, and the Watcher's watching what the Keeper's doing. The Keeper is causing illnesses and discontent and arguing, and
So it's a balance.
kind of. And when we've asked they have communicated with us. They have communicated. And when we ask them, like, how old are you? And they basically say they have always been.
Yeah.
Like, there's no beginning.
Because you think, okay, so there's good and there's evil, or there's positive and there's negative, or there's angelic, or ghost and there's demon, but there's not. There's like this. There's so many different levels.
Yes.
And there's things that are known to be in certain areas, but not. That information and that experience, because humans in general, if they can't understand it or it scares them, it's the devil.
Yeah. And
it's evil. It's,
that's throughout history.
Yeah.
Well, and this was my first time ever running into a non-human entity in a haunting scenario.
Yeah, you're talking the Black Rock.
Yeah.
Or
Riverside,
or whatever. Chulies, boonies.
Yeah, that was my first time ever running into something like that. Almost, we call him Dead Uncle Fred. Generally, you have a haunting. It's a relative. It's somebody used to own the house. There's something, but it's a human.
Yeah.
And this was not a human. These are not human. They've never been human. They will never be human. So.
Well, and the interesting thing on that one where it was bothering the kids, I don't think it was necessarily the Watcher or the Keeper. That they might have been actually trying to.
You mean with the willow tree?
Yes.
That one? Yeah, that was a third. Something.
Yeah, there was, and that I think that is more common than not, that there's not a thing. Right. There's other things. Mm-hmm. And that some of the other things that you get scared by too are not necessarily trying to harm you or scare you. They're trying to protect you or keep the safety.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about Deer Woman.
You start?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So Deer Woman, she is kind of the vengeance. She has hoofs like a deer. Sometimes she's pictured with horns, but she's very beautiful. And she will come in, she will seek out those that have harmed others, especially children. And she will approach them and she kills them. Just plain and simple. She is the justice. She will seek out and exact revenge.
And doesn't she shapeshift too, from the four-legger to the two-legger?
Yes, she will be an actual deer. But the way you can tell it is Deer Woman is even if she has shoes on, she'll still have the deer feet. Like if she takes the shoes off, the deer feet will still be there. Like the shoes. And it's it's really cool. But that's kind of what I gathered. Like I didn't go too terribly deep into it, but it was definitely like a protector of women and children. That's what she does, is she protects them and she gets revenge for anyone that harms them. So
it's children. She's protecting children,
mostly women and children.
Is it local or
no? It's actually more widespread than you think. It goes back.
It is here that type of. And here's the interesting thing, and this is one of the theories I've heard with Bigfoot, is they are these spiritual beings, these non-human, they don't necessarily die, but that they can like be gone and then appear and then shape, like blend right into the tree or go right. I mean, that they have these other powers. They are just not a giant bear or gorilla type.
And they show up when they're needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so another part is like if there's a bad person that's out to harm, like, the children and stuff like that, she'll lead them away from the children and then like get that person alone.
Can you call somebody who's harming a child?
I think they can. I haven't looked that far into that aspect of it, but I know that she'll lure them away and kill them. But I suspect that you probably could call on her if you needed her, more than likely, because she is a protector. So why couldn't you? Absolutely. I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
But there is something really interesting because you remember your paranormal class, right? And you remember the day that Katie and I were there and we approached the two Native American ladies and I said, look, we have this elemental that says that you need to give thanks to him. And, we showed her the picture and said, you need to put out berries. Okay. You remember those two ladies? Well, interestingly enough, the one I was talking to that I said you need to do herbal remedies, you need to research, she didn't put the berries out, but the other one did. And she told me later that it was because things were bothering them on their property. And she put them out and their property settled down and it became protected. Then we'll circle clear back. You ready for this? So my new job, what I do, now that lady is now one of our board members that supports our company.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And the only reason she joined is because when my boss said, hey, do you want to join this? And this is my program director. This is my operations manager, is because she recognized me and for what I helped her on the Reds do.
Wow.
And she goes, I know her. She says, count me in. Let's do this.
That's fantastic.
And I was like,
oh, that's fantastic. I love it when things come around.
Well, and that's what I like. The web.
Yeah.
The thing is connected, and you might be here, and the other one's here, but there's still that connection. And when you cross, it's amazing.
The beautiful thing is the first time that my daughter and I ran into that elemental was in Oregon. Well before we met any of you guys, when we moved out there was a particular sacred spot that we stopped at. And he was like, what are you guys doing here? And we're like, whoa, we're just staying here for the night. And he's like, okay, just respect the area. Don't trash it. And we're like, yes, sir. He's like, leave us some berries. Gotcha. We'll leave you some berries. And then ever since then, he's shown up every now and then. But he showed up when that class the night before and said, we need to talk to them. We need to.
Definitely a conduit of connections.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you guys know about that.
That is awesome.
It's just that whole energy just.
So it was not the younger one, it was the older sister. Is that right? Or was it?
So I was telling both of them. The younger sister was the one that needed to dig back into herself for the herbal remedies.
But she lived in town.
Yeah. But the older sister is the one that lives on the res. And she's the one that was like, yeah, and took that information. I didn't know. I just gave it to the younger sister. I had no idea that the older sister was the one with the problems and she latched on to the info.
From my experience, I didn't get a lot of experience with the older sister, but the younger one, she and I met up and talked too.
Good.
That the older one was a little more, not gung-ho, not,
she was
openly excited about it. She was more sit back, watch, pay attention. But I was told she went out and bought every piece of equipment she could find and all this kind, because she just wasn't the, you can look and go, oh, this person.
Yeah, they started their own little team.
I'm so glad.
I know, I am too.
Yeah, that
was great.
I was so stoked when my boss, who's really, really religious, was LDS, and was like,
that's another.
I know. He was like, he knows you. And he said you helped her. And I was like, uh-oh. I'm like, it's out of the bag then, so we had to have a long talk. But anyway, I just thought that was really awesome. So I'm excited to have another board meeting with her, bring her on board and start working with her because we're going to start bringing in some Native kids.
Well, the other background on that is the younger sister had been wanting to build back the bonds with the older sister, the religion thing kind of come between them, different things like that. And it was through the paranormal class and then finding that common ground that they have reconnected in a deeper sense than.
Okay, everybody in. Everybody wants to.
Because, so we learn every time we do an investigation, every time we have a conversation with somebody about this stuff, you learn something. It's a give and take constantly. And I think, we're talking about these classes. So I want somebody on Facebook, on the the paranormal Facebook page, said, "Why aren't you teaching classes?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I got a hold of ISU, and it was like instantly we had a class.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So this is really happening. And so I just got an email from them on the wrap up from the last class, and it was like, they can't wait to have us back. And it was this whole 9 yards, and everybody was like, they were like, "Oh my gosh, this was the best class." So there was only one bad review out of all of them, and you know who it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no,
It doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
Me?
No.
Yes.
No.
They were like, just don't bring Susie.
Yeah, don't bring Susie.
So it was one of the students that
It was one of the students last didn't like.
But they're the whole
It's okay. It's okay. Everybody is able to have their own opinion. Yeah, it's okay. But we start again the first week of May is the first Friday in May. We start again, and so it's fun because you learn because if you go, like we went out to dinner one night after class, and then you start talking to some of the students, and a couple of them were tribal members, and they'll start sharing some stuff that they probably wouldn't share to the rest of the class. Yes. It's awkward because the tribal beliefs are they're protective about their beliefs, rightfully so. They've been through enough. But the one thing, have you guys heard about the man-faced dog?
Yeah, dog man.
Dog man. Seen it, but it freaked me out because it was probably 13 years ago, and it was a fleeting glance, and I saw it, and it was like I was in Fort Hall proper in the old town, and was driving around, and I saw it. It had the shape of a mastiff. Wasn't that big? Like
a big bulky.
Like a pit bull body, like a pit bull body, but then a face of a man, the head of a man, and it turned and looked at me, and what's this thing?
What were you doing?
Just driving.
Here's the interesting thing. So I have a lot of friends out here, and the one, she heard a dog in her yard and was like, "Did you guys forget to shut the fence?" They live, I don't know exactly the address where they live in town, and her kids were like, "No." She's like, "The heck?" And she opened the door, and sure enough, there's a dog in her yard rummaging the garbage, and she's like, "Hey!" And it turned and looked at her, and she went, "Oh!" Shut the door, and she's like, "Yep, that was not a dog. It totally was a dog because she could see it from behind.
The body of
And
the
it
dog,
went like this over its shoulder at her, and it was a face.
What's the story of that?
She said you don't want to mess with them, but I haven't heard that there was nothing. They weren't doing anything. Her husband's full native, and she's not, but the children are full. They're fully tribal. There we go. I'm like licensed. That's not the right word. Just in their house doing nothing.
So is it like shapeshifter? Is it Wendigo? Is it
I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's its own thing. And when it looked at me, it just trotted around the corner, and the building was gone.
Yeah, she said it didn't turn and growl or anything like that. But she said when she looked in its face, she was like, "No, lock the door."
And it was like an old man who looked at me. And I was just so stunned that I looked again, and it.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if there's one or if there's
a bunch.
Several. But she also told me they were driving down Yellowstone or whatever, the old highway, Yellowstone Highway here, and they could see something in the field, and they were several hundred yards down the road, pitch black at night. And she said, for lack of a better word, I would have said it was a man in an Easter Bunny costume. She goes, it was a cross between a man and some type of a rabbit. She goes, you would think, like when you see the pictures of the kangaroos that are really muscular up on their hind legs. And she said it came through the field, and she said it went across the road in front of them, and they just kept driving. And she goes, we got past it. And she goes, did you see that? Mm-hmm. Did you see it? Mm-hmm. And they just kept going.
So are we dealing with the whole bunch of different elemental here? Just different.
She said
variations?
Yes, she said, again, she's not Native American, but she's been her whole life married to one, and they have adult children. She said, I would have called it a chief. is what she said, or a skinwalker.
Now, you've had some shapeshifter things go on in your neighborhood lately.
Yes.
So
I live, well, okay, I am right smack in town, but I'm 1 mile from not Texas. I live up where they've put in the new temple, and that is what my neighbor, who is LDS, believes has stirred things up there. We are just a couple miles from the reservation. Like I said, it kind of horseshoes around us up there.
She believes that temple stirred things up, or shapeshifter?
Because suddenly we are destroying habitat and building up that mountain. Because you used to,
but you're locked in. I mean, it's not. They can only go so far.
Yeah, because they'll soon hit where it's reservation.
Right.
I mean,
that's it.
Yeah. But she said, so this is my neighbor. First, she was up by the temple and they were going to go hiking because you're right there, like where the housing ends, brand new houses that are going in. 100 yards, you're in the cedars. And so they were going to go up hiking, and she sees her fellow employee's car. She recognizes his car, and she's like, oh, cool, he must be up here hiking. So they get done. She went back into her house, and she texted him. She goes, well, we went up there hiking, and we didn't see you anywhere. And he goes, what are you talking about? And she goes, well, your car was parked there. And he goes, I'm in Utah. She goes, I know, it was his year, make, model. And she goes, even something about the license plate. Mm-hmm. And she said it was really weird. So she said, I didn't think much of it. But then later that night, her mom, they live across the street from me. Her mom heard what she said she thought was an elk flopping down in front between the houses on the road, and then did the elk bugle thing.
The wrong time of year for that.
Yeah. And she ran to the window to look out and could hear the running flopping down the road. And she's like, what in the world? Okay, don't get me wrong. We have herds of deer that come down. We have mountain lions that come down. Right. I mean, but people have caught them on their doorbell cams right between Olympus, Butte.
Unheard of that you would have elk in the neighborhood come down in the winter when they're looking for food.
Yeah. Well, and the thing of it is so there's lots of theories. Those bugles can last. I mean, travel miles.
Right.
But she swore it ran between her houses and the flip-flops. Well, then I had mentioned, I think you guys may have seen it on Facebook, getting woke up by the police at like 3 o'clock in the morning because someone was breaking into cars up and down the road. Which we live in a really nice neighborhood, but it's happened multiple times. Yeah. I've been there 27 years, probably 4 or 5 times we've had people just go up and hit all the cars. So she calls because she sees 2 guys across the street. My house is here and my neighbor's house is there. And she sees them breaking into those cars. Apparently, somebody else also called the police at the same time, saying they could see people messing around with cars. So the police came in on Stephen this way and on Stephen this way, meet up at this house, hit the spotlights, no one's there. And she's like, I just saw it. There was marks on the cars. I had a mark on my car. And the cop said, well, they could have hopped the fence, they could have this, they could have that. And she said, as soon as the cops left this scraggly, I don't know if in Harry Potter and you saw the Hermione's scraggly cat, the orange long hair, looked like it'd been through a blender. She said there's this cat, and it comes strolling out where she'd saw the people. And she's like, that is really weird. She goes, and the cat looked right at her across the street. She was looking out her window. And she said, it has this really horrible yowly. I said, well, males will do that. Right. Sound. So she asked me, have you seen this? And I said, no, I haven't. I said, but there's times that Morty goes out in my yard. He's my big Labrador Weimaraner blend. And he loses his mind. He's a barking and he's freaking going up under my deck. And we'd had raccoon tracks on our front sidewalk. We're in town, but we're, foothills or up on the hill. Anyway, had 27 years, I've never seen raccoon tracks. And I said, are you sure the big thing wasn't a raccoon? Maybe we have a raccoon that's coming down. And she goes, well, I don't know what they are. But she goes, I think that they're shapeshifters. And I'm like, maybe. So I go walking outside 2 days ago, and the most broad daylight. Normally But in the daylight, normally the Yowling Cats is at night. They were straight across, like our houses kind of sit. These two here, and then we're like staggered, so you're not directly across from each other. On the front steps of my neighbors across the street, just that screaming, growling, and sideways standing, looked like he'd been through the blender. And I said, Mallory, and she came out, and I said, is that the cat? And she's like, yeah. I said, well, go scare it. She goes, I'm not going. I'm not going out there. So I took a picture of it, but it was like weird things. And then another person said that they thought they saw something between, it was bigger than a dog, they said, but it wasn't a mountain lion. And they said that it was strolling around in our neighborhood. And like I said, my neighbor swears is because we keep going into this habitat. And we are coming up close to where the edge of, and like I said, yes, we drew the line and said, this is
a juvenile.
Yeah, could have been. Because they make weird cracks too.
Well, and
Weird sounding.
everybody expects them to roar.
Yeah,
They do bird chirps.
Yeah.
They do all kinds of
they do like the chugging.
They do everything. They do
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. So,
But the most interesting story, and this wasn't in Idaho. He's a truck driver, and he was driving down the road. He's very spiritual. He does a lot of the different groups that I'm in, and they said, protect yourself. And he's like, okay. So he immediately assumes it's going to be something with driving. There's going to be an accident or something like that. Nothing happens. So he's going to this place where it's narrow roads. I believe he said he was either in New Mexico or Nevada, but down southwest. And it was where you don't have these big roads for your truck. So it's kind of one way in, one way out. So he parked his truck down where he needed to unload it. And then you had to walk to get to civilization for food or whatever. And so he's like, I'm taking a shortcut. I'm going through this field and up by these trees. I'm going to go over the hill and go down and get me some dinner. So he's walking, and all of a sudden, he says he feels the hair going up the back of his neck. And he hears again, protect yourself. And he's like, okay. And he sees what he said he thought was a deer. Came out. And then she stood up and looked at him. And he thought, okay. And he slowly started backing up, and he went back to his truck, and he got his gun. So he's like, okay, I can walk 3 miles around the road. So I'm going through this field. And he goes, I'll just fire a shot in the air. Because he's like, my eyes are playing with me. I've been driving, it's hitting dust.
Like stand up on 2 legs or 1 or 4?
4 to 2 back.
What did he say it was?
He said he thought it was a deer.
A deer. Okay.
But it was about maybe from here to your barn, 100 yards or so.
Well, a deer will stand up. A female deer will stand up on the back legs to protect her fawns.
Yes. So he gets down and he starts hearing this screaming, he says, for lack of a better word. So he's speeding up his pace a little bit, and he said, I can watch something moving right in the line of the trees. And he said, I swear that I'm like, it's just a deer. It's just a deer. And he goes, something walks out. And he goes, it was not a deer. And no, yeah, the standing up. He goes, it was human-like shape. He goes, I swore it had like this cloak around it, but it had the horns. And he's like, okay, am I seeing things, or, what the heck? So he said, I took off on a nice little trot. And he said, I have never seen anything like it. And he goes, when I got to the restaurant, which wasn't too far away, he goes, my heart was just pounding. And he said his guides or whomever had been telling him to protect himself said, it's good. And so he goes, I don't know if they were trying to tell me this was going to happen, or if this did happen, don't go, investigating it. Mm-hmm. And he said, if I think I've seen anything that was a shapeshifter, he goes, because in the tree line, he goes, I could tell it was on 4. And I kept saying, it's just a deer. It's just a deer. But usually female deer don't have, reindeer do, but our kinds of deers don't have antlers. And he said, this had antlers. It had the horns that came up. And he goes, but when it was standing there, he goes, the face was dark. And he said, I felt he goes, I felt fear. I felt like it was negative. And he goes, all I could think was they were telling me, protect yourself. And so he said, I don't know that I'd ever want to see another one again. And he said, I walked the road back. And it was a long walk, but he said, I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah, we certainly don't know everything that's out there, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And I don't think, I mean, every indigenous tribe around the world has legends and that seems similar. And there's got to be a component to that there's something there.
Like a thread that runs
Yeah,
through it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
all the
They
same.
may call it different names, but
Well, it's like dragons. They were in Asian culture. They were
Right.
in the UK. You know,
Right.
they're all
Mhm.
around. Some were different looking. They had no communication like we do
Right.
now, but it was through all of their artwork and
Right.
their, their stories and
Right.
everything else. So
I don't know. I do know that I've seen some weird things, and our clients have seen some weird things, and our friends have seen weird things. They're
I
weird
don't mind
things.
keep seeing weird things.
Huh?
I don't mind.
No, I don't
continue
mind it
seeing
at all as long as they're hurting me. I'm
Yes.
fine with it.
well, think about it though.
Right.
Like I said, a lot of these things that are guardians and protectors. I mean, we went out there like in the hauntings to protect those people,
Right.
and I think they know that.
Yeah.
I think that now, granted, they aren't going to let you cross a line or go somewhere that you're not supposed to go if it's like sacred or whatever.
Right.
But I think they have an understanding. I don't think it's a random attack of violence. I could be wrong with the little people, but
I don't know.
I don't want to run into those.
yeah.
They don't sound friendly.
No.
Yeah. But
And us like with Celtic history, have they ever been friendly in Celtic history?
No.
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 So,
yeah. Well, I hope you guys find this one topic interesting. I did, and even though we talked about it more than once. We've talked about some of these things, but every time we talk about it, we add more to it. So I think that's interesting. And yeah, stay tuned. We have more fun for you.
like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Thank you.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Speaking of Spirits, powered by Pocatello Paranormal Research in Pocatello, Idaho. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you could be here. If you're enjoying the podcast, please do us a favor and go to whatever platform you are listening to the podcast on and give us a review. We prefer the 5-star reviews. This helps us know how we're doing, and it helps others to find the podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you on our next podcast.